Thanks for clicking through to Chamber Web TV. This is Chamber Chat. These are one-on-one interviews with business and political leaders in our community, and today I'm excited. We've already had a little bit of a conversation with John Tennant, former CEO of CTT and former Trade Commissioner, about the new European Free Trade Agreement. CETA is actually what it is, the Canada-European Trade Agreement. But, John, one thing that we didn't talk about the last time is the government procurement. Man, that could be absolutely huge. We've got a program going on right now. Actually, Minister Malloy is now in charge of procurement for the province of Ontario. That's his bailiwick, so if you want to get a job working for the government, you can call John Malloy's office. I'm sure he'll really appreciate that. But that's really important. And we know that those doors of opportunity are going to be open to Canadian businesses as well as European businesses to come here. Let's talk a little bit about that and how important that is.
Well, the first point, of course, is that with the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement with the European Union, one of the breakthroughs is to have provisions that open up government procurement, in Canada's case, below the national level, at the subnational level, provincial and municipal.
Ooh, wow.
And, of course, in Europe, there are 28 countries, and the procurement market throughout the European Union is opened up. Mind you, in line with what generally are the arrangements in government procurement, this is for larger contracts. But larger means maybe $350,000 for some contracts. When you get to big construction contracts, it may be $7 million plus. But larger contracts, and there are some exceptions as to areas that are covered. But it is a measurable opening of the procurement market. The provinces were at the table, and municipalities were kept informed with the negotiation of this because they needed to understand what was happening with respect to this. But this means, and it's something that the Europeans were very interested in, this means that Europeans may be taking a closer look at opportunities for government procurement in Canada. But, as you said, the European market is wide open to Canadian firms of all types, whether it might be Babcock and Wilcox bidding on some big boiler contract that government is led.
Huge for some of these companies in our region.
But it can also be much more moderate-sized contracts, people offering architectural services, engineering services, or highly specialized construction services.
Environmental services, whatever.
Absolutely, and equipment that would be associated with that. So, starting right now, the agreement may be 18 months or even a tad more before it comes into full effect. Now is the time for businesses here in Cambridge and the Waterloo region that do business with government to be scoping out what it means for them in terms of an opportunity in Europe. And they should also be thinking about how they can make sure that they keep the market that they have here in Canada. It may mean sharpening your pencil a little bit, but it may also open up some opportunities for partnership.
Yeah.
The Europeans have a number of leading firms that are known globally for their public-private partnership capability, P3.
Yep.
And what they may lack here in Ontario, in this area, is the understanding of the local market, the connections, the ability to scope out what's needed.
To work with them locally here
and reach out now and say, look, we could work together.
And you know what it's all about? It's all about developing those relationships. And oftentimes when you got this type of an agreement, you can have the relationship where they do business here, but that carries back to Europe, and you might be doing business over there with them as well in their own home area.
And this is an opportunity to be a first mover for Canadians because, of course, for now, the Canada-European Union means that we've got a leg up on our American partners. That is, Canada has access both to the U.S. market and to the European market. And from a European point of view, if they can land in Canada, manufacture something here or be working with Canadian partners,
Yep.
they have access to the U.S. market because of our longstanding free
Well,
trade NAFTA arrangement.
now our free trade agreements extend to nearly 1 billion consumers, just under 1 billion consumers. It's
Between
amazing.
NAFTA and
Yeah.
with Europe, that's absolutely right. So we're in a very, very opportune position, strategically so, and that's again why it's worth moving quickly when we can get the Europeans' attention and have Europeans see that Canada is a place on which they can build their North American interests.
So if you were a small business owner right now in Cambridge, in Ontario, in the Waterloo region, what would you be doing?
Number one, you want to look at where you are in terms of the market in Europe. Are you doing some business? What are the barriers that are keeping you from doing more? Those are barriers, particularly tariffs, that may fade away. So you got to look at that. And remember, there are 28 countries in Europe. You may be doing well in 1 or 2 countries, but have you really paid attention to some of the Eastern European countries? The other side of the coin is to look at what you're doing with Europe in terms, or could do with Europe, in terms of purchasing from Europe. Maybe a company here, a manufacturing company, is currently buying its production equipment from the U.S. because they have duty-free access. Maybe there's a 6% tariff against the European equivalent that has kind of kept them out of the marketplace. Does the European company become a very competitive supplier to you, lowering your costs?
Interesting.
And, of course, with inputs, parts, and other things that
I,
would be
when
used
you
in
when you
production.
talk about that, I think of the alternative energy companies, the solar companies and the wind-powered companies, where they, I guess, are widely known as having a distinct advantage. They've had windmills for years doing this. They have entire clusters in some of the zones in Europe that are committed to just alternative energy solutions, whether it be solar or whether it be wind power. Is all that stuff going to end up being tariff-free? And what about the Canadian content that has to be in solar equipment and that kind of stuff?
It's not clear where the Ontario content requirements stand with respect to the European agreement. There's not been any mention of any specific provisions, but in fact, Canada and Ontario lost a World Trade Organization case, which suggests that that's a preference that may need to disappear. But again, in that area, government procurement can be a factor with the publicly owned utilities,
Yes.
which are covered at a certain level of business. I think about $650,000. And anytime you can do the kind of deal that's been done with Europe under CETA, you're just making supply chains potentially more seamless.
Absolutely.
This is what we've already seen happen with NAFTA. The supply chains disregard borders because it's duty-free. So there's opportunity for much more to be flowing, closer partnerships for European companies to see the opportunity to be in Canada to supply the U.S. market because they can do duty-free with Europe here, and Canada can move into the U.S. So there are very, very significant opportunities. And of course, just in terms of what a local company should be thinking about, in addition to what the opportunity in Europe is and what they can maybe buy more cheaply without tariffs from Europe, they also need to be thinking about the consequences of Europe becoming more competitive in Canada with lower tariffs.
Yep.
So there may need to be some defensive strategies or other approaches that are going to help.
Or maybe you just need to be a little. You need to be aggressive in their marketplace. If you feel that they're going to be aggressive in your marketplace and maybe will be better positioned in your marketplace than you are, you just need to be more aggressive in their marketplace. And you and I talked. I gave you the analogy. If you had a little tiny business here in Cambridge that you were humming along and doing, what if for the same cost you were to transplant yourself into downtown Toronto and all those consumers now are your potential customers? That's kind of the relationship. We got 33 million people in Canada, 500 million people in there. That's like, Cambridge having exclusive rights to trade with Toronto. It's a big marketplace for us.
And history shows, analysis shows that the smaller partner smaller in terms of population and size of the economy, gains disproportionately compared to the larger one. So what studies have been done say that Canada, in absolute terms, might get just a little less than the Europeans do in terms of increased trade and jobs. On any proportional basis, 33 million versus 500 million people, Canada is a winner.
What are they
And
saying? They're saying it's going to mean 12 to 15 billion dollars.
for Canada in
Yeah.
terms of increased trade.
But in comparison to what their growth would be, which might be more than 12 to 15 billion.
A bit larger, but
Yeah.
not that much
But
larger.
but on a per capita,
proportional basis,
yeah.
no, Canada's the
Big
big
winner.
winner, as we have been with respect to free trade with the United States and subsequently with NAFTA. So
This is a big issue, John. This is a big issue, and we've been pushing and pushing for a long time. We go to this Centralia thing in Winnipeg, where small SMEs from around the world gather, and it's been like pulling teeth for me to get people from Cambridge just to say, I'll go to Winnipeg for 3 days for a couple of $1,000 and see what's out there. They need to do that now.
absolutely.
They need to get on that bus and say, I need to develop relationships, maybe strategic alliances or partnerships, with European countries. If I don't think I can do the supply here, then I need to partner with somebody over there with my ideas and get into that marketplace. Big market.
Another way to put it is CETA is certainly important enough in terms of potential impact that a company needs to relook at its strategy because of it, and now's the time.
You heard it. You heard it from this guy. And when this guy tells you better start looking at your strategy, you better start looking at it. Thanks, John. Good to see you
Peter.
again. Let's keep this topic going because we can inspire, we can create a really strong economy in the Waterloo region by making sure that our businesses are thinking about doing business over there.
Well, and there's more to come. We've got a decent amount of detail on this agreement, but the legal people still need to do some work. One area that we'll hear more about and need to hear more about is the content requirements, the rules of origin.
Yeah.
How much Canadian content a company will need to have to qualify for duty-free entry into Europe. And sometimes the devil can be in the details and things like that.
As soon as that content comes out, John will know about it, and we'll have him back and we'll talk about it here. So tune in to Chamber Web TV and Chamber Chat, and John and I will keep you up to date as to what's going on and where you should be doing business. Thanks again, John.
Thank you.